Here's a shocking truth most Christians never hear. The Messiah was never supposed to die. The crucified Messiah is not a Jewish idea at all. In fact, the very idea of a crucified Messiah would have been offensive and absurd to first-century Jews, and it remains offensive to Jews today. In Hebrew, Mashiach means anointed. It is used for kings, priests, even foreign rulers chosen by God for a task. David was called a Messiah. Saul was called a Messiah. Even Cyrus, the Persian king, is called God's Messiah in Isaiah 45 because he was appointed to free Israel. So when Jews spoke about the Messiah, they were not waiting for God himself to appear in human form. They were waiting for a man chosen by God to fulfill a mission to restore Israel, to gather the exiles, to establish justice, to bring peace, and to lead the nations to know God. Read Isaiah 11, Jeremiah 23, Ezekiel 37. That is the expectation. And here is the key. The Messiah was supposed to succeed, not fail. A Messiah who is arrested, humiliated, and executed by Rome would have been seen as the opposite of what Jews were waiting for. Paul himself admitted this in 1 Corinthians 3. We preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. Paul knew exactly how absurd it sounded. So, how did early Christians defend such an idea? They turned back to the scriptures and reinterpreted them. Isaiah 53 became their proof. But the word Messiah never appears there. Not once! Isaiah already tells us who the servant is. In chapter 49 it says, "You are my servant, Israel, in whom I will be glorified." The servant is Israel. By chapter 53, Israel is the one despised, beaten, crushed by the nations, and yet, through Israel's suffering, healing comes to the world. Notice something else. Isaiah 53 is written in the past tense. He was despised. He was rejected. He was pierced. It is describing suffering that had already happened 600 years before Jesus. The exile, the oppression of Israel. Not a future Messiah. What about Psalms 22 or 69? Christians often point to them, but these are laments of David or Israel, prayers of righteous sufferers, not messianic predictions. No Jewish interpretation before Christianity ever applied them to a Messiah. So why did some Jews believe the key was resurrection? A crucified Messiah made no sense, but a crucified Messiah who rose again could be reframed as God's hidden plan. Paul turned that shock into the centerpiece of his message. That Messiah's death was not failure, but atonement. And the resurrection was proof. Still, most Jews rejected it. It contradicted everything the prophets had promised. A Messiah who dies at the hands of Rome cannot be the Redeemer of Israel. That is why Judaism and Christianity diverge so sharply. Judaism holds to the expectation of a victorious Messiah. Christianity reframed the story into a suffering and crucified one. Here is the conclusion. In Jewish thought, the Messiah was never God, never crucified, never an atonement sacrifice. He was a human leader, chosen to restore Israel and bring peace. The idea of a divine, crucified Messiah only arose after Jesus' death, when his followers reinterpreted Israel's suffering as his story. That is the shock most people never hear. The Messiah was never supposed to die. That idea is not in the Hebrew Bible. It is a Christian invention. Judaism still waits for a Messiah who brings peace and victory, not one who dies. Thank you for watching. If you want to know more about the Jewish background of Jesus, watch this series. Until next time, Shalom!